This video is going to be about the initial sales call and the first meeting that you'll have with the client, where he's on to find out more about your services and what you're offering, and you're there to find out more about his business and his pain points so that you can position the AI to actually help his business. But before we go into the sales call itself, you want to make sure that you're recording every single sales call. That way you can listen to them again. A natural thing that's going to happen is that you're going to listen to the sales calls, see a lot of gaps where you're not explaining things properly or where you could have said something else, and just listening into it and understanding those things will make you a way better salesperson, will make you more articulate, and make sure you're asking better questions and drawing better conclusions as well. You can either record them yourself, or you can actually use this link. I usually use fathom.video. It just records all your meetings and then puts them on the website. I primarily use it to record meetings and ask for action items just to make sure I'm not forgetting anything. And then you can actually also make it write up the next meeting agenda depending on what was discussed and what was said on the meeting. Yeah, pretty cool tool. Check it out if you want to. Just make sure you're actually recording the sales calls and listening to them again. Now for the sales call, I've tried to keep as much scripting out of this as possible, because one thing that is going to help you immensely is do not go off the script too much, because what you need to understand is a sales call is a framework. So the framework is getting to know where are they right now and what is the solution. And then of course there is the closing part as well. But once you get a hang of the framework instead of just following a script, that's also when you improve immensely and will be able to have better sales calls and sell easier. With that being said, I always use the same start, so I guess that is kind of a script. I always say, hey, thank you for hopping on. This meeting is just going to be figuring out if it would even make sense to partner up. So just a couple of questions to see if and how I can help you. And if we can, I'll let you know what we have to offer, how it works, and everything. Super simple. It sets expectations and it doesn't sound salesy whatsoever. So what you want to do is you want to set those clear expectations, frame it as a partnership, and that the meeting will just be figuring that out. Remember, you're not selling AI, you're selling outcomes. Businesses don't really care about AI, to be honest. They care about money and they care about customers. That's why we're here. So whether that's more sales, less manual work, more time saved, it doesn't matter. Just focus on the outcome. And then of course the tech is cool at some part, and that's what you go into in the demo, but just focus on outcomes. Now, the first question you want to ask them is, if they booked the meeting themselves, you ask them, what made you schedule a meeting with us today? And if they said yes to a meeting and you outreach to them, you can always ask them what interested you about using AI. And once you understand why they're on the meeting, you want to give them a quick rundown of what it is that you're offering and what the outcome is in one sentence. You just want to make sure that it aligns with what they're interested in. What I usually tell people is that we develop customized AIs and we add them to their sales process that engages and follow up with their leads to help find interested customers and drive more revenue. It's super simple to understand, and it's also a big part of the sales is actually getting across the table what you're selling and making it super clear to them. Besides that, we need to make sure that we're in control and we are the authority, we are the expert on the call. So there's two things you want to keep in mind: is maintaining authority by being the expert and being the one leading the call. Think of it as an interview. Albert and I, we often refer to this as the doctor approach. And the reason why we call it that is because when you go to the doctor, he doesn't just give you some pill that may or may not help you. He asks you a series of questions to understand your situation. Like, where does it hurt? How long has it been going on for? To really narrow down the pain point and then provide the solution, the pill. You need to be doing the same thing and ask good questions and genuinely be curious. And by being genuinely curious, you're going to get more and more information. And with that information, you now need to put yourself in the expert position. And this is why we've made you build the AI first, because you're now an expert. You know how the AI works, you know how it gets result, and you can be confident in your own solution, which helps your sales immensely. Because at the end of the day, people, they buy from calm, confident expert and not needy closers. And understanding this will get you super far in sales and will make selling super easy as well. And usually how you do that is by asking good questions. So if you want to qualify somebody, these are some of the questions that we usually use. You don't go through them all. If you're at an early stage, I would say skip most of this. Of course, you need to understand what they do and what customers they're targeting, so ask those questions, but you don't need to overqualify here in the beginning. So now is actually when we start asking these questions that will give us the information that we use to conclude if we're a good fit to work together. The first question is, are you currently using AI in your business? And we obviously already know the answer to this, but we ask the question because it makes them instantly wonder if they should be using AI in their sales process. And then to understand how we can implement the AI into their sales system, we ask them about the whole thing. So asking them to briefly give us an overview of how they're generating leads and how they're turning those leads into sales. This is probably the most important question of the whole sales call. Once they've answered that question in depth and you've maybe asked a few more questions to get clarity, this is where you want to position the AI in their sales process. So an example of this could be, if we implemented the AI on all the leads that don't pick up the phone initially that your sales call is reaching out to, and then book them in with the sales team, would that fit into your sales process? So right there, we used the words that he used to describe his sales process back to him while we implemented the AI into it. And we asked them this to get a confirmation that they see the bridge between the AI solution and their own sales team. And if they don't initially understand that, we actually get an opportunity super early into the call to dig into why there is a bridge and how we can actually help them. Now we want to understand a little bit about their funnel and what kind of metrics and prices they're seeing in terms of their lead costs, because this is what we're going to use to price our AI. The 3 questions that we want to ask is how much are you paying per lead, what percentage of the lead pick up the phone, what's your cost per acquisition. And the cost per acquisition question, you can leave it out if you are not interested in doing a revenue share deal. You can always ask it to get a better feel for their business or more information. But if you want to go for an appointment-based deal, you ask those 2 questions. And then you divide the lead cost with their response rate to get their current cost per call. And then once you've calculated it, you always want to confirm with them to make sure you guys are on the same page. So if you pay $30 per lead and 30% respond, you're paying $100 per call, correct? And they're going to say, yeah, something along those lines, or yeah, that's a good average. Basically, just get confirmation here. Because again, then if they don't understand, we want to just break down the math and show them how we actually got that result. Once we're on the same page here, we want to go towards the solution. I like to transition over into the solution by saying, appreciate all the answers, the interrogation is over now, because we just asked them a lot of questions and this always makes them laugh, which is always a great thing. But if that's just not your vibe, you can always just skip to the next step, which is concluding by saying that one of our clients had the exact same issue with the exact same sales process. You just want to make sure that you're very elaborate on the pain point and you explain the pain point back to them almost better than they explained it to you. And then before you show the demo, you just want to briefly explain what the demo is and how you will implement it into their current sales process. Then you want to walk them through a real AI conversation, something that you tested before that shows them something specific about their business and you know will impress them. And it actually doesn't take that much because these people are not used to seeing AI like this. So once you've shown them the conversation, you can let them try on their own. And they usually go through like a super generic flow, which is fine. It's just really just to make sure they understand it and see the potential in it. And they're going to be impressed even though it looks super generic to us. Once you've done this, if you have a case study, this is now you want to show it. You want to focus on the results, show a good and real conversation with a customer, and show a calendar that you book appointments into. And then you can also show an overview of campaign results where you include the response rates and the booking rates. And then after the demo and the case study, you want to ask them, what did you think of the AI and do you think this could help you convert more leads? If you see that they're hesitant, you want to ask them directly why they think it wouldn't work for their business in particular, and then address those concerns directly. And then once you get past the hesitation, you want to go into the pricing discussion. And once you go to the pricing discussion, you really want to emphasize and focus on the result-based model. Not only does it show a lot of confidence that we can do this without getting a super high upfront cost first, but it also shows that we're going out of our way to make it risk-free for them. And then once they understand that, you want to go in and make it clear to them that we are trying to lower their current costs, which in this case could be appointments, for example. So you'll say, we always aim to cut down your current costs. This is super powerful because right now you're comparing their current cost to something that would be cheaper. So it's very, very hard to say no. Another way to approach this, which could make the sale even easier, is to do a revenue share deal. And you can use the cost per acquisition number they gave you earlier and ask them if their usual cost per acquisition is $2,000, then you could do a revenue share at $1,000 or $1,500 per new sale. And then if they're hesitant in any of these 2 scenarios, you can always just ask them why. And then a really, really good question to follow up with if they're still hesitant is asking them how likely they are to close a sale on somebody that hasn't picked up their phone in a week. And they'll start to understand why it is that you do what you do. And then once we get a yes from them and once they understand the value that we're providing, you want to close the sale by pitching the pilot. Explain to them that you want to run a pilot with 2 different buckets of leads, which is their age leads and their newer leads. And then this is what I usually say. You can alter this to the industry and the offer that you have. But again, this is just to give you guys an example. And then I always just say, does that sound good? And then usually they actually say yes, because this is a really, really strong offer and it's actually a really interesting test for a company to do as well. Once they say yes to the pilot, you want to send them the $1 Stripe link subscription payment. And then if they are hesitant, I have these 2 questions that I always ask and I love asking them. First question is, if you were to run the pilot, what would make you regret it? And it's a super good question because it often leads straight back to their real objection, which you can then address. And the second question is, what would make this a no? And this is a question I usually use when they need to think about it or if they need to address this with somebody else. If you ask this question, it usually always brings out the real objection that the business owner himself has. And then once you get past any objections, you want to tell them that you usually take payment on meeting and you'll send them a link now and what card they want to put it on. It's a super easy way to close it, and it's a very natural way of closing it as well. And then once you get the payment out of the way, you want to set up a meeting. But before you set up the next meeting, you want to go through and set some expectations. You tell them that you'll go over the questions about their business and the contract on the next meeting. And if they need to pull any leads or data from their CRM, you ask them if they can have that ready for the next meeting as well. So you want to use this opportunity to set some expectations, and then you want to set up another meeting within 1 to 2 days. 1 to 2 days usually works best because it's early after the sale, and you'll see way better results with 1 to 2 days than doing it a week ahead. I've added everything I talked about here into the script, so you can find that below. And then I've added a bonus. I've added all the objections that I usually get to help you guys not fumble as many sales. And trust me, it will still happen, but in this way, you'll be more prepared for it. And then you'll find everything you need to know about onboarding in the next video.